You guys, I have my favorite person in the whole world here, Miss Amy Tucker from Salty Britches. But you know, we got to start with a dad joke. Amy, what's the best way to talk to a giant?
Oh, my.
You got to use big words. You know what I'm saying?
That's ridiculous.
What's up? How are you?
I'm good, friend. How are you?
I'm really good. It's good to see you. As always, you've been such a friend of the company for so long. We've done a podcast on my other podcast before, talking about more of the business stuff, startup stuff, but you're past a lot of the startup stuff, and you've blossomed, you've bloomed, and from this, like, you've got a really cool story. I think it's inspiring, especially for a lot of our parents listening who may have an idea and they want to, you know, start a side business and have it grow and be able to provide, you know, more income for their family, save money, go to Disney World and that kind of stuff. Just like as a taste of what that's like, but it can grow into so much more than that. So anyways, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Salty Britches.
Sure.
And we'll go from there.
I was just a desperate mama. That's the way I like to describe it. But when my son was young, he couldn't swim in the ocean. He'd get horrible, painful chafing on his thighs and chest and underarms, and it would ruin our vacation. And as the mama, unfortunately, I was often the run between with the crying kid of the room and the pool and the room and the beach and yada, yada. And it was miserable. I mean, it would just ruin our vacation. So I decided, you know, there's got to be a solution to this. And I went home to my kitchen and I figured it out. And we used that product, my formula, we used it for 4 years and didn't give it a thought. I had a full-time career.
For yourself, you just used it
for him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and a couple of friends and family that would vacation with us, they would use it too. But I had a full-time career working for someone else. And, you know, we had a comfortable life. And we decided the demand was just too great. So we sold everything, moved into a tiny house, and made a go of the thing.
Now, hold on. Let's take a step back. That's amazing, first of all. I love the fact that you just took the risk and you just like jumped in for it. You say that there was too much, the demand was too great. Mm-hmm. Where did this demand come from if no one knew about it?
Well, Facebook, really, as much as I hate to admit that. So we were on the beach in 2017 with a couple of other moms and families, and all the moms were hanging out. And that was the thing. So originally, there was no time for me on the beach. You know, it was dealing with crying kids and uncomfortable. My son happened to suffer.
Your trip, your vacation to the beach was terrible. Anything but a vacation.
It was terrible. So at this point, they're using Salty Britches, which we had not even named yet, really.
It was Amy's secret recipe.
Amy's goo. And we were sitting on the beach and for hours as parents, as moms, you know, just fixing all the problems to life. And one of the moms said to me, she's a very dear friend of mine. Her name's Amber. She said, you need to post on Facebook. You have a solution to this. And I'm like, really? You know, that never even occurred to me to tell other people about it. I don't know why. It just didn't. So I posted on Facebook, and that post had over 700 comments, different DMs, messages, direct messages from people that knew me. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, where do I get it? What is it made of? Mm-hmm. You know, I remember seeing that question, what is it made of? And the light bulb went off, and I'm like, I can't tell you what it's made of. I'm going to have to do something with that. So when we got home from the beach, we blended and poured into little jars every day for 6 months. It was exhausting.
And you're trying to send this out to people who were asking you about it?
Yeah. It was just demand generated from that post.
Wow.
Yeah. And we put a little cooler on our front porch, and I'd fill that in the morning with jars. People would come by and get their jar and put $10 in the cooler. And I know my neighbors thought I was doing something I should have been doing. But it was
What's going on at that house across the street?
Yeah. So it was just on local Facebook. And then one of the local markets in town where I live, they saw all this unfolding and they contacted me and said, hey, why don't you let us sell it for you? And I'm like, yes, Jesus. So I went to the market and took 100 jars, and they would sell out of them in a few days. So another one, a different town over, another little boutique friend of mine, she contacted me and said, hey, we can sell them here too. And so I remember a certain Saturday morning, I was still trying to figure out how to meet all the specific people that were messaging me. It was just nuts. And I said, okay, I'm going to be at this boutique Saturday morning at 9:00, and I can sell them to you there. And I showed up to that boutique. I hope I don't cry. This makes me so weepy. I showed up to the boutique with my box of poured Salty Britches, and there was a line all the way down the sidewalk for people that wanted to come in to buy Salty Britches.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was.
So this turns okay. So it's a necessity for yourself that just like turns into a business, and you can't stop it.
That's right.
It had too much momentum. I get it now.
Yeah.
You're like, so we downsized. We went all in. The demand was too great. How can I got it?
Well, I have to tell you this part because this is an important part of the story. My husband, who's amazing, is really risk adverse.
He is awesome. I love him.
Great.
He's the best.
He's such a great man. I could not have done this without him. And he would watch what, he saw what was happening. And he came to me. It was his idea. He came to me and he said, I think we need to really make a go of this. And he works in manufacturing. He's like, you need a manufacturer. We need to look for a co-packer, these types of things so that somebody else can make this because I just could not hardly keep up. I thought I was going to go crazy because I was working both jobs, and it was just too much.
Very similar to my story.
Oh, it was exhausting. And a kid, an active, busy kid. So I started looking for co-packers and manufacturers at his push. And then he, on the other hand, was looking at what our options were to bootstrap this thing on our own. And that's what we did. So we had a nice home on a golf course. Well, we sold that sucker. We sold everything and moved into a little lake cabin that's been in the family since 1984. Tiny little house with no closets and no washer and dryer hookup. And we moved into it.
Y'all.
And I'm telling you, everybody needs to purge their life at least once. It was cathartic. I mean, we just got rid of so much. Yeah. It was so freeing. And then fortunately, we were able to buy the property next to our little cabin, and we built a pole barn. And that's where we distribute from. That's where my office is. That's where everything kind of goes down at the pole barn. And that's kind of how we did it.
Y'all still living in the little cabin?
We are.
Really?
We are.
You got a washer and dryer yet?
So what we did, when we built the pole barn, we built a laundry room.
Really?
Yeah.
This is awesome.
And it is great because I can go to work and do laundry while I'm at work.
Hey, most people go to work to get away from the laundry.
At my house, there's always laundry.
Oh yeah,
so you might as well do it all day long.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It really is. It's such a good process. I'm like, why didn't people think of this? Why don't they take their laundry to work and do it? I mean, instead of leaving it at home and doing it, So it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. It's exactly what I want to do.
Put a washer and dryer in here.
No, I'm not. My wife probably wishes I would.
Exactly.
Will you take the kids' school uniforms there with you and wash them?
I'm serious. Yeah.
Man. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's productive.
Anyways, so how long ago was that?
3 years. Almost.
Is that it?
Almost.
Seems longer than that.
That's about it.
So when you and I connected, that was like very early in this.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking you were a couple years into it at that point for some reason.
About a year. I was about a year into it when we first connected. Yeah. And that's such a neat story by itself because I had brought my son to Hilton Head to go fishing with another family. And while we were here, I had just gotten my first tubes, my first product, and went by a store who said, hey, you need to go to this triathlon store. Go try sports. Yeah, there it is. And I did. And that's where we put it. The guy was awesome. He was one of my very first stores. And then some of the triathletes from Hilton Head found it. And then the rest is history.
Yeah. And here you are. Okay. So all that happens. You're a couple years into this. Now, what were you doing before? Like, what was your journey of knowing how to produce a product like this that was going to work? Were you were in that industry, right? You did some pharmaceutical chemistry type stuff.
I was actually in sales for pharmaceuticals. Yeah. Yeah. Like real stuff. But I have a chemistry degree. I don't know that any of that helped me, I swear. You don't think so?
But like, I'm trying to think of other parents out there in the world that are like solving a problem for themselves. Sure. Again, very similar to my story. I was solving my own problem and it turns out everyone else wanted it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like how in your case.
I'll tell you how. This is a need that my son had and I was desperate to fix it. And when you are desperate to fix something for someone you love, you figure it out.
Right.
And I don't know so much that pharmaceutical sales helped me with that.
Well, the sales side maybe didn't, but the chemistry side, your background probably helped.
Yeah,
and you knew some people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That helped.
Well, you know,
You had a network.
I had a little bit of a network, but the people that ended up helping me, I did not know.
Really?
I was relentless. I just didn't take no for an answer. I called people until I got where I needed to go.
Right.
I called a manufacturer who laughed me out of there. He's like, how many do you need? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe 500. And he was like, oh, good Lord, come back to me when you need 3 million. You know, and I just found a manufacturer. I had a formula. It wasn't perfect. It was okay, but I wanted to tweak it a little bit and I couldn't quite figure it out. So I landed on a manufacturer that was willing to work with me on their sample line. And they were in Minnesota. They asked if I had a formula. And I said, yeah, I do, but I'm not completely happy with it. This right here is divine intervention, this little part of the story, because they said, oh, you need to contact we have a friend who is a contract chemist, and contract is the key word. So she does not work for them. With all the other manufacturers I was talking to, they had an in-house chemist. So you're signing over. Now, granted, you're signing NDAs, but you're basically giving them your formula and you lose it. You do. It's part of the contract. So if they're going to tweak it, they own that. Yeah.
Which is not good.
No.
That's scary.
And that's typical. So with cosmetics, it's typical. So with this scenario, because I was so small, I landed in a very small company that didn't have their own in-house chemist. They used a contract chemist. And when I flew out to meet her, she was like, thank God, you didn't go straight to a large manufacturer who's going to own your formula.
Right.
So she specialized in stability, which is what I needed help with. But I knew the language, of course, I knew how to work through that with her. And she helped me in no time get it right. And there we went.
I think that's such an important part of, because I was in the same boat. Our stories now, I don't realize like before how parallel they are, because I was in the same boat where like I created our first product. I didn't know how to take it to market or what to do or the manufacturing side of it, which is how I ended up with Alex,
right,
who, I've known since I was a kid, but he was selling stuff to Target and Macy's and all these big, big box retailers. I was like, he knows about manufacturing and like mass, retailers and all these things. Like I need to hit him up. And then of course it was like finding the person that could help you along the way, get those next steps. But even before that, it was just like asking questions. I was reaching out to people, Mean Gene from who started High Speed Gear, which many people listening will probably be aware of, which is HSGI, which he went on to sell. Now it's Mean Gene Leathers, his business, but like he was like the guy in the tactical gear space back then. And I hit him up and he was like a wealth of knowledge. Oh, you need to talk to these guys. You need to do this. You need to talk to these guys. Like if you just ask,
yes,
you'd be shocked at how many people will just help.
Yes, especially other entrepreneurs.
Right.
They really
especially
cheer for you.
They'll cheer for you. They'll really like, especially if you're like a good person. If you come at them like some sort of hotshot asshole, like
forget
pound sand. But like, so there's that side of it too, I think. But I was fortunate enough to have a handful of people just point me in the right direction, answer this question. This is the guy I need to talk to. Let me introduce you to this person. So it's so funny how parallel these stories are. It's like solving that problem, asking the questions, getting some of the answers, getting guidance, and like just not taking no for an answer, and believing in yourself.
Yeah.
I think is a huge part of it. Early on, did you have struggles on the finance side of like manufacturing this stuff where you're like, how the hell am I going to come up with 40 grand or whatever it might have cost? Was that an issue for you, something you had to overcome, or were you fortunate enough to not?
Yeah. I mean, that definitely plays a role, but I had done some smart things kind of unbeknownst to myself with stock and whatnot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no spring chicken. I've been around a while. I'm 45 years old. So I started this when I was 41.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a history of working for some really great companies, and I had made some good decisions that I was able to cash that in.
Time was on your side in this case.
Oh, yes. To me, that is all God intervention. It's all directed that it worked out like it did, because there were other ways that it maybe wouldn't have happened that way, but it did. And that helped. And then of course, when we sold everything, that played a role. Yeah. That played a role in it. And I have on purpose probably grown slower than I could have because of that piece of the puzzle. I didn't want to get, I'm going for the risk, yes, but I didn't want to crush myself either. So I have purchased and sold, purchased and sold, purchased and sold, and kind of done it that way. And then the brand has evolved.
On the product, you mean?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it's paying for itself now. But it took a while to get there.
I think that's a big hurdle that a lot of people with a good idea have to overcome. Like they've got this great idea. I can kind of make a prototype. Maybe they can't. Maybe it's just a sketch on a piece of paper, the napkin, right? And then they got to figure out how to make it. And that's a hard thing. You and I were both fortunate enough that we were able to make our own first product. But going into the manufacturing world, obviously there was the things you had to overcome with quantities.
Definitely.
Very similar to myself where, I go to the factories early on and it's like 1,500 bags minimum order. And I'm like, I can't afford this. Like I'm a 27-year-old dad, with another business. I barely make enough money to pay my bills. I don't have an extra 30, 40 grand to like invest into this thing that I think maybe could possibly be a good idea that seems like it has traction, but maybe not. I didn't have any money. I was broke.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting too. I said time was on your side where you were a little older than I was when I started. So you had some wisdom. You had made some decisions. You had longer to have, had a career and made more money along the way and had some other decisions that worked out for you. I was young, but had time on my side because I like, well, I'm now 35 and I've had all this time to get to this point.
That's right.
And also being young allowed me the ability and the energy to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning working.
There's a lot of that.
Where I'm now at this point, I'm like, forget about it. I'm not staying up that late working. I don't have that energy anymore. You know what I mean? You don't have the energy when in your mid 20s, like, thank God you have that energy. Because then that's, you're just able to grind it out. A lot of that's passion too. If you have the passion for it, that creates that energy and allows you to have those sleepless nights. But still, it's like, it gets harder as you put on some age, you're like, oh my God.
It's just hard in general. I mean, when you're working for yourself, there is no real playbook. The beauty is that there's so many that have gone before you, and that you got to run in the right circles. You got to surround yourself with the right people. That has been by far the biggest advantage, is that we have met, like you, we've met some wonderful people that have helped steer us in the right direction. I could have never done it. I don't care if I had all the money in the world. I couldn't have done it without the right people.
Right.
I could have hired people to do it for me.
Yeah, but that costs money.
That wasn't what...
Not everybody can do that.
No, I know.
That's not an option for many people,
No, we really have been very scrappy. And I've learned a lot about everything.
What are some of the biggest things that you think you've learned in terms of the business side of things? We were talking a little bit before this, like recently it's been admin stuff after admin. It's just banging your head against the wall, which for me is the least exciting. Like the admin stuff,
of course, it's torture.
Forget about it. Thank God I have a business partner that is like obsessed with that stuff. And he just like lives his life in a spreadsheet. And Alex, God bless you. Like he's absolutely great in that regard.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's not.
But what are some of the bigger challenges that you had to kind of learn and overcome on the business side of things that you can share with?
Right. Well, I think too, when you first start, you really need to have your finger on everything. Even if you hire somebody, you can't just turn it over to them. That never works out very well. You need to understand your numbers. You need to understand exactly what is coming in, what's going out, who's touching what, who's responsible for what, who's taking care of it. Inevitably, if you don't, you're going to bleed somewhere.
And I think what you're saying is too, like you need to know every aspect of your business. So when you do hire somebody to come in, if they're doing a good job or if they're not.
100%.
You can kind of cross check behind them. This is slipping through the cracks. This isn't whatever, right? Is that
absolutely?
Okay.
Yeah. That's been a big one for me. Yeah.
Her intern's over here.
That's the one I don't have to watch.
And I'm just picking
I trust
on
her
over there.
Fully. She's amazing.
She's awesome.
I've been lucky that's new for me, is to have someone that I can depend on.
How amazing is it to get someone that you like takes that weight off your shoulders? You're like, you can just task them with something and know that it's just going to be done.
It's priceless.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I'm looking.
Better step it up, Trav.
I'm looking forward to more of that. Yeah, it makes a big difference. Totally takes a lot of the pressure off.
Yeah. So understanding every aspect of your business so you can hire the right people. And a lot of hiring the right people is to hire the people that are either one, better at your job than you are.
Definitely.
Or two, taking something off your plate that's distracting you from the thing that you're better at.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about, like the admin, like CPA work, your books, my doorway, all these taxes and, just all of that stuff that it's a glass ball. It cannot drop.
Right.
And it's not fun. So
it's stressful.
For me, at least.
It's stressful. Yeah.
But you better know who you're working with.
Right.
Because that's where you can bleed quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah. A good accountant is like super valuable.
Amen.
In vetting those kinds of people, getting referrals from other people that you trust. So like, hey, I work with this person. They're great. Whatever. I think those are valuable lessons for sure.
Yeah.
For people to be mindful of.
Yeah. For sure.
Has most of your business been up to this point online, or is it you're doing a lot of like retail stores as well? Mm-hmm. And you got a super rad contract with some badass military bros.
No contract.
Excuse me. I'll retract that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you want me to talk about that story?
Yeah, let's go. Let's hear it.
Okay. So this is
this black tube is like it's a big deal.
It's the coolest. Yeah. So, and
I wish I had I think it's in my other drawer in my desk.
I have one in my bag. I think
the white one.
I think I might have. I just sold a bunch of them. So this has been a neat story because we originally started as a coastal brand. The beach, my son swimming in the ocean. I thought that's all it was. And then we had some athletes that discovered it, and that kind of grew its own legs and started really building momentum in that space. And then we had,
particularly with runners and doing triathlons and
riding
that
bikes,
kind of stuff, a lot of chafing issues, yada yada yada.
Yes.
Yep.
Those doing really hard things. Those that wear uniforms, any uniform, linemen, firemen, policemen. I mean, wearing those wool uniforms. It's any kind of gear belt.
Right.
All of those issues. Well, it started really growing in those spaces, and then some special force operators found our product, tried it, liked it, contacted me, and said, "Hey, can you make this in a black tube?"
Yeah, and you said, "Of course I can."
I'm like, "Absolutely." Turns out that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it took forever. I mean, it was much more of a challenge than I anticipated. So it ended up evolving into having an unofficial board that was full of special forces operators from MARSOC, Green Beret, Navy SEAL. All these guys just liked the product. And
let's talk about the product for a second and what they liked about it, because I know that the way you have this formulated, there's major benefit. It doesn't break down in salt water.
That's right.
There's other products on the market that claim to do a similar thing that don't perform like yours.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, if I told you that, I'd have to kill you.
I love it. No, but I know that the salt water is an issue.
Yes.
It breaks down.
Yes, which is, what prompted the whole thing. They like it because they can go out in the elements for extended periods of time, and they're just not suffering from the issue. We heard some really gnarly stories from these guys, like all the way to shaving their thighs and wrapping their thighs in duct tape just to go out, because the extra sliding pants can really cause irritation. There was lots of things. But with all the gear and the ruck, their shoulders really suffer from it. So a lot of the clothing won't help with all of the hot spots. Their feet. So this one product, you can slather all over your feet and you won't get blisters. And that's a big deal for them, obviously, especially in some of these really hot elements where they are and where they're serving. They like it because it lasts. It's robust, and it's the most robust thing that's available for them. No
big deal. You're such a rock star.
I'd never talk about it. So when I do, it's like, dang, that is a good product.
Yeah. This particular, having the black tube in my hand now, because this has been like a 2-year project going on behind the scenes, banging your head against the wall, trying to get manufacturers in line. And then it was like shipping delays and then COVID and all these things. And oh my gosh, what was really interesting was just the challenge of trying to get the larger size opening in the tube.
It was not easy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I have boxes and boxes of failures. Lots of them. Lots of different packages.
The failures are the best part, though. I love looking back at stuff.
I can't throw them away.
Right. right?
I have to save them.
There's like a sentimental value into
Yeah.
like, I learned something from this. This got me to this.
Yeah.
And so
It's like a
this
roadmap.
has value. Yeah.
It's a roadmap.
I love it. I
That's-
love that.
The black tube, I've learned all sorts of even little things like the UPC. The FDA requires that it has to be a lighter color so it'll scan. Well, originally I wanted black on black. You know, I had this great vision of this super cool look. Well, no, they ixnayed that right away. It's not going to work. So I went with the sand color, which works.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
The verbiage on the front of the tube has a story too. It says prevents or soothes chafing and blisters during ruck, amphibious operations, and all other imagined misery. And that was written by an active duty MARSOC operator.
That's cool.
And I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
think it's awesome.
It is cool. Our logo was picked out by some of those guys. We're working with a videographer that is in that community that does a lot of videos for them, that is making videos for us.
Oh, cool.
Using different images from these operators.
Very cool.
Yeah, you'll never see their faces, obviously. We want to
Yeah,
protect them at all costs.
For sure. Absolutely.
But it's really fun to see some of the work that's happening with this.
I love it. Cool.
Yes.
Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
I love you to death.
I
just
love you more.
Really appreciate you.
Where can
having
everybody
me.
find you online?
You can find us at getsaltybritches.com. That's our website. We're in the middle of updating it with this new black tube.
Same with Instagram. Get Salty Britches. Facebook.
Yep.
All that stuff.
Get Salty Britches. You know, because Salty Britches was taken by a dead racehorse.
Nuh-uh.
The URL.
Really?
Yeah. So we had to add get to it.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
funny.
So anybody that thinks this is easy is out of their mind.
Yeah. It's a lot of work for sure, but
But it's awesome.
be persistent.
That's
Cool.
right.
Thanks again for coming. Guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave your ratings, comments, reviews, and all that cool, fun stuff. We appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.